The air inside the Zalari high chamber was as dry and stiff as their politics. Jared adjusted the ceremonial collar choking his throat and pretended he hadn't just been dismissed with a flick of Velzari's tongue. She stood tall, regal in her obsidian robes, every movement sharpened by the eyes of a dozen watching alien delegates. She didn't glance at him once. He said nothing. He couldn't afford to look weak. Earth had sent him as a symbol of unity. A human bonded to a Zalari was supposed to be proof that empathy crossed species lines. And he believed that once. God help him, he did. Before the marriage had teeth. Velzari spoke fluently now in English when she wanted to. But she rarely did. Not in public. Translator glitch, she'd say, when her words cut too deep. Or, you misunderstand our cultural intent. But Jared wasn't mishearing the disdain. Not anymore. The council debated over resource control along the Dyson border. The energy rights were volatile, but nothing compared to what was festering under Jared's skin. 3 years into their marriage and he still hadn't decided whether she was cold by nature or had gone cold by choice. He knew one thing: the woman he married didn't exist in this room. The speech he'd prepared was restructured at the last minute. Velzari insisted. The original sounded too human-centric, she said flatly, without meeting his eyes. She slid the tablet across the table. Trust me. It will go over better. He didn't argue. He never did, not when she used that tone. The one that meant, don't embarrass me. The irony, she once claimed humans fascinated her because of their emotional chaos. Now she weaponized it. He read her version aloud at the podium. Every word rang hollow. No one clapped. The Zalari delegates offered polite nods. The others murmured in that low diplomatic hum that said we're unimpressed but pretending otherwise. Jared stepped down, cheeks burning. Velzari didn't acknowledge him. She smiled at High Priestess Rezan, tilted her head, brushed back a strand of hair, not for him, but for optics. He knew that head tilt. He'd once loved it. Back in their quarters, he spoke carefully. You changed the tone. She unfastened her cloak. It needed to change. You erased the human appeal entirely. You wanted results, did you not? I wanted honesty. That, she said, was honest strategy. She turned her back to him, unbothered. He stood there watching her shoulders relax, and something inside him tightened. His voice dropped. Are we still a team? Velzari laughed, softly, almost pitying. Do you always measure teamwork by mutual submission? No, he said. I measure it by loyalty. She turned unblinking. You still think this is about love? And just like that, the conversation was over. He didn't sleep that night. He stared at the ceiling, cataloging the 1,000 invisible cuts she'd made over the past year. The subtle dismissals. The phrases that sounded like concern but tasted like control. She used love like leverage. He told himself maybe this was just how Zalari handled stress. Maybe she was protecting him in her own way. Maybe this was salvageable. He stopped lying to himself when the public betrayal happened. It came 2 days later during the signing forum. Cameras hovered in silent orbit. Dignitaries from 7 worlds stood in formation. Velzari took center stage. Jared was beside her, holding the translated treaty on a crystalline scroll. Without warning, she spoke. Before we sign, let truth be stated, she said. I must acknowledge a failing, ours and mine. We invited humanity into this conversation prematurely. Their perspective, while passionate, lacks the depth required for galactic stewardship. Jared's chest went hollow. She continued. I have decided to realign with the Coalition of Purity, effective immediately. Ambassador Jared represents only Earth. He does not represent Zalari. No one moved. Then someone coughed. Another delegate looked down. One sneered. Jared's hands clenched around the scroll. He felt heat rush into his ears. His mouth opened, and nothing came out. She didn't even glance at him. An aide ushered him from the platform. No one stopped them. No one protested. In the hallway, a reflective panel caught his image, stiff, pale, humiliated. He looked human in every worst sense, emotional, alone, exposed. He didn't cry until the door closed behind him. Back in his temporary quarters, he turned off every notification, every monitor, except one. Her message came in on a secure channel, voice only, like a dagger wrapped in silk. "Are you okay? I love you." 3 seconds of silence. Then another ping. A second message. "I didn't want it to be like that. We'll talk soon." Jared stared at the screen until it blurred. He didn't reply. He opened a bottle of old Martian bourbon someone gave him months ago. Poured a glass, then another. But it didn't numb anything. He played the message again. "Are you okay? I love you." His fingers hovered over delete. He didn't press it. Not yet. He didn't eat. The bourbon from the night before sat half-finished on the counter, mocking him. Jared watched the station lights flicker past his window, each pulse a reminder that the world had moved on without him. The diplomatic forums were continuing. Velzari was already being quoted by Allied channels as a voice of necessary separation. No one mentioned him. His comms pinged again. Another message from her. Text this time. "I hope you're not taking this personally. Politics are fluid. We both knew that." And below it. "I still care about you deeply." He powered the terminal off. Sat in silence. The hurt didn't burn anymore. It just sat there like dead weight. A knock. The door opened without permission. Zalari didn't have much respect for privacy. It was Councillor Del Thavan, neutral party, neither aligned with Velzari nor Earth. "I was sent to check on your well-being," the alien said flatly. "You have not left your quarters." Jared nodded once. "Still alive?" "I suspected. Emotionally damaged, however." "Is that your professional assessment?" "No," the counselor replied. "It is your face." Jared let out something between a laugh and a grunt. "You have been used. Your emotional bond exploited for political camouflage. It is not uncommon." Jared didn't answer. Del Thavan stepped forward. "But it is rare for the used to stay silent after. I don't want to make it worse." "For whom? Yourself? Or her?" Jared's silence was enough. "Your people believe pain is proof of love. Ours believe pain is proof of miscalculation. Which do you think this is?" "Both." "Then correct the miscalculation." Jared didn't respond, but the words settled. Later, when alone, he opened the treaty again, Velzari's edited version. The phrases that had once seemed diplomatic now read like betrayals. Unilateral guidance, cultural limitations, contingency redundancy. All cloaked jabs at humanity's role. He opened his original draft. The human voice was clear: compassion, mutual uplift, flexible protocols, emotional transparency. She had gutted it. He replayed memories not as a grieving lover, but as a witness. Her silences after meetings. Her comments: "You're too passionate. They won't respect warmth. You need to control your face when they disagree." Every one of those was a warning dressed as advice. He finally activated his public line. "Ambassador Jared Earth," he said to the interstellar feed. "I was accused of naivety. Perhaps that's fair. I believed unity came through trust. I still do. But trust is not obedience. It's not silence. And it's not surrender." He ended the broadcast without fanfare. It went viral within an hour. Messages poured in. Delegates from minor factions requested meetings. The Outer Ring species, historically ignored, wanted to speak. They respected what they called the human tolerance for vulnerability. He leaned into it. He met with quiet diplomats and opposition voices. No cameras. No scripts. Just straight conversation. He told stories about Earth's past, the wars, the peace efforts, the breakdowns. He was blunt. Honest. He didn't sell Earth as perfect, only as willing. That was the difference. They listened. Zalari propaganda called him emotionally unstable. It backfired. Aliens who'd never been allowed to speak publicly began echoing his words. The phrase, "Trust is not obedience," started appearing in alien art. Then graffiti. Then broadcasts. He didn't seek revenge. He built influence. Velzari didn't contact him again for days. When she did, her tone had shifted. Not cold, but careful. "You've made quite an impression. Be cautious, Jared. You're treading into places with sharp edges." He responded once. "So were you. You just smiled while doing it." He didn't hear from her again. The station began reshuffling diplomatic arrangements. Jared was invited, unofficially, to co-draft a new amendment proposal. His name wasn't on the cover page, but the words were his. This time, they stayed in. He didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. But something shifted. The tightness in his chest was gone. When he saw himself in the mirror now, he still looked tired, but no longer ashamed. Late one night, he walked to the central observation deck. A few Zalari were there, speaking softly in their native tongue. One young diplomat approached him. "You were her husband." "I was." The alien hesitated. "We wondered if your kind would survive this humiliation. Most species would have disappeared in shame." Jared smiled slightly. "We do shame differently." The alien studied him. "You remind us of old stories. Ones we buried." "Good," Jared said. "Dig them up." When he returned to his quarters, there was one final message waiting. From Velzari. No subject line. Just her voice. "I underestimated you. I thought you'd fold. That you'd run. I knew you loved me more than I loved you, and I thought that made you weak." Silence. "It didn't. It made you dangerous. You used that love to make people feel seen. And I hate how much that worked." Pause. Then softer. "I meant what I said. I do love you. But I see now it doesn't matter." She ended the message there. Jared saved it, then archived it. Not as a keepsake, but as a case study. Love, when twisted, becomes a weapon. But once it snaps, once it breaks, the wielder is the one left holding nothing. He didn't forgive her. That was the first step. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Forgiveness implies the wound was accidental. This wasn't. This was crafted. She had mapped out his trust and walked him straight into a trap with a smile. Jared rebuilt quietly. He didn't petition or demand recognition. He just kept showing up. When other ambassadors grew evasive, he asked the hard questions. When others hid behind protocol, he told stories about failure. Not in shame, but in ownership. Aliens respected it. Not all, but enough. 3 weeks passed. The treaty was gutted. Rewritten. Debates flared, died, flared again. Through it all, Jared remained. Not polished. Not powerful. Just persistent. He got a message from Earth's central authority, cold, bureaucratic. "Your status is being evaluated. Your marriage has diplomatic consequences." He didn't respond. He didn't need them to validate his usefulness anymore. If Earth wanted to pull him, they could. But they hadn't. They were watching. So were others. He was invited to a strategy session with the Trilynth Coalition, formerly Zalari aligned. Not officially, of course. Nothing was official now. But the conversation moved quickly. "You understand emotional perception better than we do," said their representative. "We were taught its weakness," Jared replied. "That's what she said too?" "She miscalculated." "I know." They gave him access to internal reports. Quietly, other species joined the table. Humans weren't central anymore, but Jared was. They didn't want Earth's system. They wanted his voice. He adjusted. No longer speaking as the betrayed. Now speaking as the bridge. He never named her. Never accused. He didn't need to. The data spoke for itself. The Zalari war bloc had fractured. Velzari's alliance dissolved under infighting. Without the optics of the interspecies marriage, her credibility waned. He heard rumors she was being reassigned. Stripped of ceremonial status. Nothing confirmed. He didn't celebrate. It wasn't revenge. It was inevitability. Then she returned. No announcement. No warning. He walked into a quiet negotiation chamber, and there she was, standing alone, out of uniform, eyes tired. He stopped in the doorway. She said nothing for several seconds. Then, "You've changed." "You haven't," he said. She flinched. "I didn't come to justify," she added. "I came because there are things I didn't say." He folded his arms. "I'm listening. I chose power over us. I thought it was the logical path. You always said love was a distraction." She nodded. "Because I feared it. I didn't. That's why you won." He didn't reply. She stepped closer. "They're calling your amendment the empathy doctrine. Even some of my people are using your language. It's not my doctrine. It's just what's true. I wish I'd seen that sooner." "You did," he said. "You just didn't care." She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were wet. "I do care." "No," he said quietly. "You cared that I walked through what you thought would break me, and I didn't. You cared that I mattered more after you tried to erase me. But you don't love me. You just regret that I no longer need you." She didn't argue. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded. "You should be." A silence passed. Long and heavy. She tried one last time. "You once said love means choosing someone even when it's hard." "I did," he replied. "And I did. Over and over. Until I realized I was the only one choosing." She didn't speak again. He walked past her, took his seat at the table, and began the session. She didn't join. Later, after the chamber emptied, he found a final message on his console. It wasn't signed, no voice, just text. "I think I loved you more than I knew. Too late now. Keep doing what I couldn't." He didn't delete it. He didn't respond either. The treaty was signed a week later. Not the original. Not hers. A new one, leaner, bolder, built on choice and equity. Dozens of species co-authored it. Jared's fingerprints were everywhere. Quietly. Exactly where he wanted them. At the summit, he spoke for 2 minutes. No grandeur. Just clarity. "We built this out of disagreement. We built it out of disappointment. That's how you know it's real." They stood when he finished. Not because he demanded it, but because they saw something in him she never did. Not power. Not perfection. Just a man who refused to break. And that, finally, was enough. He was no longer introduced as Valzari's former bond partner. Now they said, Jared of Earth. Or sometimes just, the human who spoke. Titles evolved faster than laws. Reputation outran legacy. He stopped chasing approval. He had his own orbit now. Delegates waited for his take before finalizing positions. He didn't exploit it. He used it to sharpen debates. Cut through flattery. When someone lied, he said it. When someone stalled, he pressed. His clarity wasn't aggressive, it was surgical. Valzari faded. She wasn't gone, but she wasn't feared anymore. Her last appearance was on a minor council, no longer center stage. When her name came up, people shifted topics. No gloating. Just irrelevance. Jared began mentoring younger diplomats, alien and human. They came with rigid notes and tentative questions. He told them, "If you're not ready to be wrong in public, you're not ready to speak." Most looked shaken. Some came back better. Those were the ones he kept close. There was one, Sora Tellen, young, sharp, half-human hybrid, nervous around Jared at first. She asked, "How did you survive humiliation on a galactic scale?" He said, "By letting it finish." That stuck. He didn't talk about Valzari anymore. He didn't need to. Every room where he held respect was a room she'd once tried to block him from entering. He didn't mention her name. He didn't have to. The silence did it for him. But he hadn't healed all the way. It showed in the quiet hours, when the halls were empty. He would sit alone sometimes and replay her betrayal, not out of longing, but analysis. Trying to isolate the precise moment she stopped seeing him as a partner, and started seeing him as a pawn. He always landed on the same moment, the first time she corrected him in public, not out of necessity, but optics. The little smirk after. Like she'd won something. That was when the erosion started. He filed that knowledge away. Not as bitterness. As data. One night, Counselor Maravel, an old Trilinth voice, found him alone. "You never got closure," she said. He shrugged. "I got free. That's more important. But not cleaner. Clean's a myth. You get honest or you get stuck. I chose honest." She smiled. "You wear your scars well. They're not scars. They're receipts." He slept better after that. Then came the Earth recall. Unexpected. Official. He was asked to return for a full debrief. No mention of consequences. No tone of celebration either. Just formality. He packed lightly. He wasn't sure if he'd be going back to the stars. Before leaving, he sent one message across the diplomatic net. "Progress isn't made by the fearless. It's made by those who keep moving even when their heart breaks. Thank you for moving with me." He didn't sign it. Everyone knew who wrote it. The flight back to Earth was quiet. He looked out over the curve of the blue planet and didn't feel pride. He felt ready. At Central Authority, the questions were cautious. "Did you knowingly act against the Zalari bloc?" "No. I acted for the honest bloc." "Did your personal relationship influence your choices?" "Of course. All relationships do. That's not a flaw. That's context." The panel nodded, scribbled, whispered. He was cleared. No punishment. No promotion. Just acknowledgement. But then came the offer. "Earth is considering its first cross-species emotional advisory board. You'd lead it." He blinked once. "That's not a real title." "It will be." He didn't ask who suggested it. He already knew. Later that week, he received one last anonymous transmission. No signature. Just a line of text. "If you ever speak of me again, tell them I taught you what not to be." That's still a kind of gift. He closed the file. Archived it. He didn't hate her. He didn't wish her pain. He hoped she learned. That was all he could hope for now. He accepted the position. The board was small at first. 3 humans, 4 aliens, 1 AI construct. He gave them one rule. "We don't protect feelings. We protect truth. If we do that well, trust will follow." They did. Over time, his story faded into structure. His name was still mentioned in briefings, referenced in training materials, quoted in essays. But it wasn't his face people remembered. It was his choice to speak when silence was safer. That became the legacy. Not the betrayal. Not the heartbreak. Not the red face left alone in a chamber of alien eyes. But the voice that rose anyway. The man who stayed standing. The board's first crisis came sooner than expected. 2 allied species had misinterpreted emotional norms during a joint relief operation. What was intended as gratitude by one was seen as mockery by the other. It escalated fast. Trade shutdowns, diplomatic walkouts, cultural slander broadcasts. Jared stepped in without waiting for permission. He didn't posture. He listened. He broke the translation filters down to raw emotional data and showed each side how the same words diverged in meaning. When someone asked why it mattered, he said, "Because survival depends more on tone than tech." The conflict de-escalated in hours, not weeks. Not because of policy, but because someone explained pain without turning it into leverage. The board's credibility soared. Requests started pouring in. Emotional audits. Interspecies training. Conflict simulations. Jared assigned teams, reviewed cases, pushed hard on any instance where pride tried to dress itself up as principle. In the middle of that surge, Earth's authority offered him a secondary role, liaison to the Interstellar Ethics Tribunal. It was a courtesy. He rejected it. I already serve something bigger than legality. I serve the space between assumptions. The refusal earned him enemies. Old power structures don't like when someone chooses impact over status. But they couldn't dismiss him. Not now. He kept contact with his former protégés. Sora Tellen was now moderating first contact protocols. Others were mediating inheritance laws between cross-species families, deprogramming weaponized shame, facilitating reconciliation where war had scarred for decades. They called it the Jared model. He never endorsed the name. He told them, "Don't copy me. Outgrow me." Some did. One day, a new delegate approached him, Lyran, young, unreadable, from a faction Jared hadn't worked with before. "You've become legend," Lyran said. Jared replied, "Legend is a word people use when they want to stop learning." Lyran smiled. "Is it true you love someone who dismantled you?" "Yes." "And that you rebuilt yourself without bitterness?" "No. I rebuilt with bitterness. I just didn't carry it past the foundation." The alien stood quiet for a moment. "Then you're more useful than I thought." Jared nodded. "Then stay close. You might get something done." He didn't rest. He didn't chase peace. He chased clarity. Every day he carved more space for truth in systems designed to hide it. When others stumbled trying to preserve alliances, he cut through with one line. If honesty breaks it, it was never stable. Eventually, Velzari disappeared from all forums. She was neither praised nor condemned. She became a footnote in diplomatic manuals under case study, emotional collateral. Jared didn't dwell on her. He used her absence to prove presence could be redefined. He used the shadow of that failed marriage to show newer voices what resilience actually looked like, not moving on, but moving better. He spoke at fewer events now. Not out of withdrawal, but necessity. Influence required silence, too. It created room for others. The board had grown beyond him. 27 members, 7 languages, hybrid thought protocols. When he showed up, it was surgical, not ceremonial. One evening, alone in his quarters, he received a data parcel labeled, "For when the work no longer hurts." It was from a species that had once aligned with Velzari's block. Inside was a restored memory clip, an uncut transmission of her, moments after the first betrayal. She hadn't known it was being recorded. "He's going to survive this," she'd said, eyes unfocused. "He's too stubborn to disappear. And I'll never be part of what comes next. That's the cost." Then silence. A long one. And then, "It was never about him. It was about me, needing to be the one above. And I broke something that had no backup copy." Jared watched it once. Then again. Then he deleted it. He didn't need her reflection. He had his own. He stood in the mirror, older now, not polished but undeniably alive. Still red-faced, maybe, but not from shame. From the fire it took to keep rebuilding. He wasn't waiting for closure anymore. He was building what came after it. By year 4, the Emotional Advisory Board had its own satellites, neuro archives, cross-cultural playback systems. Jared approved the last budget personally, stripped of anything ornamental. "We're not here to impress," he said. "We're here to interrupt before people bleed." He stopped giving interviews. The ones asking didn't want answers, they wanted angles. His time went to unseen labor, drafting emotional definitions that translated across species, reviewing cases where grief was mistaken for rebellion, where guilt was marketed as loyalty. He wrote protocols with precision, never sentimentality. Sora Tellen led the board's crisis division now. She'd stopped asking him what he would do. She knew her own weight. She messaged him after a successful de-escalation between the Orvexi and the Lori. "They told me the human model worked. I told them it wasn't a model. It was a man who didn't run." Jared read it and smiled faintly. He didn't reply. He was called to a classified meeting with Earth's Diplomatic Intelligence Wing. They'd intercepted a new alliance draft between former Zalari loyalists. The language was vague, But the energy was clear. Someone was trying to rewrite the narrative. Quietly install a revisionist history where betrayal had never occurred, where the human response had been disproportionate. "They're trying to sterilize what happened to you," said the analyst. "No," Jared said. "They're trying to erase what I did next." He didn't ask for retaliation. He issued one document, 6 pages of neutral language, citing treaty timelines, cultural definitions, and recorded decisions. No emotion. Just record. He ended it with a single line. "If facts make your legacy unsustainable, you weren't betrayed. You were revealed." It was rebroadcasted in 400 channels within 12 hours. The revisionist draft was withdrawn. He didn't gloat. He trained 10 new advisors that week. 2 of them were former Zalari sympathizers who had publicly denounced their allegiance. He welcomed them without fanfare. Growth wasn't a performance. It was a pattern. They asked him what he looked for when selecting leaders. He said, "I look for people who lost without breaking. Then I see if they're still curious." That became the new hiring motto. At an interstellar summit, a veteran delegate pulled Jared aside. "Do you ever miss her?" He didn't pretend not to know who they meant. "I miss who I thought she was," he said. "I don't miss being disposable." The delegate nodded. "She's gone quiet. She was always loudest when weakest." No more words were needed. He returned to Earth once that cycle. Not for ceremony. For clarity. He stood in front of the training class that now bore his name, looked at the wide-eyed recruits and said, "You're not here to be heroes. You're here to be mirrors. And not all mirrors are thanked." One trainee asked what he did when someone he loved made him feel small. "I became too whole to fit their narrative," Jared said. The silence after was loud enough to last weeks. A new internal report surfaced later that year. Dozens of unresolved diplomatic failures traced back to emotional suppression, shame-based customs, honor rituals with no off-ramp. Jared condensed it into one sentence. "Pain that isn't voiced becomes policy." That report changed 6 planetary constitutions. He stopped thinking about Velzari. Not as avoidance, just obsolescence. She hadn't grown. She hadn't apologized. She hadn't destroyed him. She just paused him, and he had hit play again without her. When the board's 25-year projection model was finished, his name wasn't in the results. It was in the foundation. Referenced, not centered. That was the goal. He read every line, nodded once, and then closed the file. Legacy, to him, wasn't being remembered. It was making sure the right things outlived him.